Hello and welcome to the Team Liquid strategy guide for Mythic Silken Court in Nerub-ar Palace. I am Telegon, a Liquid analyst, and today I'm going to be taking you through the entire Silken Court encounter with the Liquid strategy and breaking it down in its entirety, every single piece, to make sure that you are the most prepared you possibly could be coming up to this encounter. My guild recently defeated this boss in 76 pulls post-nerf, so obviously it's a bit easier, but I still think that's a very low pull count compared to most of the guilds fighting the boss at this time. So hopefully we can help you do similarly and defeat the boss with minimal hassle and minimal wipes. With that being said, let's get into the Mythic mechanics. The Mythic change for this boss is that players may assign themselves a color at the beginning of the boss encounter. There will be 2 circles around each boss, around the Nerub-ar, which is like the melee boss. You'll see a red circle, right? And standing inside this circle gives you the red debuff, which is called Mark of Rage. And similarly, around the blue boss, there's another circle, which seems bugged on this VOD, but similarly it just appears around this boss, and by being within the circle, you get applied the blue debuff, which is called Mark of Paranoia. Now, these debuffs do is, you can see around my character here, there's a small blue circle, and around red characters, they also have a red circle. So if either of these players' circles touch, both players die immediately with no conditions. So if a blue player's radius ever touches a red player's radius, both players will die. And so we're playing around that for the entire encounter with like a blue stack and a red stack. And then different mechanics target the opposite color from each boss. So if you're familiar from Heroic, Nerub-ar's frontal, the brown one with the spikes that come up, target, it's called Impaling Eruption. You can actually see it on the VOD right now. This frontal, it only targets blue players. Right? So similarly, the caster's frontal only targets red players. So we're going to make use of that information throughout the fight to bait these frontals in ways that are advantageous to us. Similarly, the ability that Tekaj does called Web Bombs only targets red players, and it prioritizes ranged players. It drops 6 bombs, and if there are 6 ranged players, those ranged players will always get targeted by Web Bomb. And that is a pivotal part of our strategy, which we'll circle back to later. So we are splitting the raid into 10 red players and 10 blue players at the beginning of the encounter by standing within the red and blue circles. And then these red and blue players spawn orbs of their color when they are hit by certain mechanics. So if you are hit by either the red or blue frontal, you will spawn an orb. If you are hit by Venomous Rain, which all 20 players in the raid are, you will spawn an orb. If you are hit by Web Bomb Landing, and during each intermission, you will periodically spawn orb when a new tick of her intermission damage goes out, which is, I believe, Entropic, Barrage, and Spike Storm for each intermission, respectively. And then the last mechanic that spawns orb is Web Vortex. And Web Vortex works a little differently in Mythic. So just to fast forward and show you what it looks like. So we have the red and blue teams split here. What Web Vortex does is it picks one of the groups at and complete random to pull first into the center of her model, and then it will pull the second team. If you watch here, and so it pulled the red team first, and then it pulled the blue team. So that's the Mythic change for Web Vortex. On Heroic, it pulls everyone all at once. Obviously, because you have the split, it can't do that. Otherwise, everyone would just immediately die. So now that we've gone over the Mythic mechanic, the last change on Mythic is you have 5 dispelled debuffs to manage, and I believe that is it. So moving on, the first thing we need to talk about is assignments. So what you need to do is assign players to either blue or red, and you need to be aware that you need 6 ranged players exactly to be on the red side, and you need at least 3 ranged players to be on the blue side. And the reason for this is because we have 3 red ranged playing in the middle of the room, and then 3 ranged red players playing in melee. And the 3 ranged red players are in melee are baiting the web bombs to create the web pairs with the strand to stop a Nerub-ar's charge in the first phase. In the last phase, the entire red team is keeping their web pairs so that on the first and third web vortex of P3 so that they can stop the charge. And the web pairs that you've defined for P1 aren't as important, as the whole team just needs to make sure that there are 3 strands to break that charge or stop the charge. So 6 ranged exactly. You can see we have 2 locks and a holy priest playing in the middle of the room as red. And then we have a preservation, a devastation, and an aug playing in melee as the 3 range players that are going to bait the web bombs in melee to create those pairs. And I'll show you what that looks like a bit later on. To finish talking about how you're splitting up your raid and how you need to slot people into your raid and stuff like that, the blue side, you can see we have exactly 3 players playing in middle, 2 mages and a hunter. And then we have a resto shaman playing in melee as well. So they technically count as ranged. And if you have extra ranged players that you need to slot in, it's completely fine to put them in the blue side and as a melee. You just want to have 3 of each color that are going to be rotating around them in the middle of the room. And then you need exactly 6 players who are ranged in red to make web work with our strategy. And then so if you have any extra range, you can just put them in blue as a melee player and have them stay with the melee stack and rotate around. If you are going to do that, probably I would prefer them to be like higher mobility range that aren't as affected by having to move, because obviously the melee have to move a fair bit more than any of the other people, like the people who are playing in mid, but we'll get back to that when we watch phase 1. So this is how you need to split your group to red and blue. The other thing that you need to do is create web pairs. So what we are doing exactly is, let me find a good POV of this. So if we go to Rela's POV here, right, and web bombs come down instantly. So what we are doing is the people who are, we're creating the web bomb pairs as soon as they land, right? So we have the person who's baiting them in each of these scenarios. They're staying where their web bomb is baited. And then for the third one, we're creating the pair without the person who is baiting. So someone is walking into the center so that immediately when the web bomb lands, the connection is made and you can move slightly to place the orbs from Venomous Rain. So to look at the assignment for that, it's going to look much like this. So we have, these are the 6 ranged players in our raid who are red, and 3 of them are baiting web bombs in this formation. So we have a right looking at the boss, a middle, and a left. And then we have our 3 other ranged players in middle who are dropping web bombs. And what these players are doing is they are soaking the web bomb as it comes down. So the web bomb itself goes away and is soaked without forming a connection and only spawning 1 orb. And then they're moving a bit to the left and dropping their Venomous Rain orb. And then they're doing this movement here. So you can see it says first ranged soaks. So what's happening here is the red players have dropped, you can see the first orb on the right, this is the web bomb orb, and then the second orb to the left is the Venomous Rain orb, and then the red players are rotating on the outside to the left, and the blue players rotating on the inside to the right to soak each of these orbs. And so the blue players can each take 2 of these orbs, and you can see that I've assigned exactly which 2 orbs each player should take here. And then when the red players come in, they can take each of these ranged players, the blue ranged players orbs, which is only 1 each, and then they can look to soak a bit more if necessary, right? So this is like the first web bomb and Venomous Rain rotation for ranged players. The ranged players playing in mid, to clarify, and then this is the connection. So here I've assigned the players who are forming the web pairs with the web bombs in melee, right? And you can see that the person who is baiting the right or closer to the wall web bomb is not actually a part of this pair. And so you can see that this player has to drop, bait this web bomb, move out, and then allow the tank and the rogue to move in and then create the pair. If an important thing to note is that anyone hit by the swirly of the web bomb will create an orb. So you need to make sure that these are fairly spread out, even more so than you see in this VOD, because you can actually spawn extra orbs and make it much more difficult to soak. So if you can see here, this space, if you were to stand here, would spawn 2 orbs per player. So say you're standing right on this X, you're going to get hit by this web bomb and this web bomb and spawn 2 exactly perfectly stacked orbs. That's another change that they made on this fight that you should be aware of, is that they made it so that the orbs spawn exactly under your character. So you can whereas before it would like spawn randomly around your character's model. So you can very easily create double stacks of orbs And with the increase to 4, like you die at 4 stacks of having soaked another orb, it's very easy to be at to see an orb, run into it, and then it's actually a double and you get four stacks and die. So that's something that you really want to be aware of when you're baiting these circles. If you can minimize the amount of overlap between the web bombs, the safer you'll be for sure. Hopping back over to the assignments here. So let's just go over it one more time. We have the assignments for where the 3 ranged players who are playing in melee on the red side are baiting their web bombs. This will be exactly the same every time. We have the 3 ranged players in the middle who are baiting and breaking their web instantly without making a pair, and then moving left to drop the Venomous Rain orb. And then these players who create the web bomb pairs should, after the web bomb drops, they soak it, they make their pair. They need to move slightly off of the orbs that they've created for Venomous Rain to drop and make more orbs so that their orbs aren't stacked. And then this player, the Preservation Evoker, who's dropping the inside orb, if you choose to have this player not make the web pair, which they could definitely do, if they're not making the web pair and they're just baiting the bomb, they need to move in, but not so far in that it makes the orb hard to soak when the blue team rotates around and to soak. So I think the best way to see this is to just watch the first movement. So another few notes about how we're starting the fight here. So everyone needs to be in the circle pretty much as the fight starts to get the appropriate color. If anyone doesn't get assigned a color, they die, and then there's a bunch of weird stuff. So just mind soothe both bosses, and you can stand very, very close to them. If you watch the beginning of this VOD, you can see we are all like right in the boss's hitbox, right? And so this is very easy to start off with. The other important thing at the beginning is that the blue team is actually baiting the red frontal this way behind this boss, and there is a gateway we can take if we want to get out of this frontal, and this just makes it super nice for us. If you watch this play, we bait the frontal here, and then we just easily move out of it with the gate or by walking. And then the blue side should be getting ready for Venomous Rain by spreading, and then the red side is getting ready to bait web bombs, right? So on this first set, web bombs go out, people move to instantly create the pairs, right? And then they've spawned the orbs from creating the web bomb pairs. They've moved slightly to move the Venomous Rain orbs off of the orbs they've already created. And then immediately as all the orbs are down, we are rotating around and soaking. And then the red web pairs are going to wait for this frontal to go off. And then far players of these pairs rotate around to stop this charge, right? And so that's the first bit of the fight from a melee blue perspective. And this is the first part from melee red perspective. And let me show you some more interesting pictures from an assignment that I've made. So this is I think a helpful image for the people who are baiting the web bombs, right? So we have an Aug Evoker, a Dev Evoker, and a Preservation Evoker, right? And so this one is the right bait, middle, left, looking at Skynspinner Takaj, right? You can see here that there's a significant amount of overlap where players can make double orbs. This is a very easy point of improvement. Just move this or move this web bait a bit to the left, and then you very much decrease the amount of overlap that is created. This one could be slightly to the right, and then the TLDR here is you don't want this overlap in between the bombs. Make absolutely sure that you're not spawning these double orbs by getting hit by both, right? So these are the web bomb bait positions for the 3 people who are baiting. And then scrolling down, I've made another graphic for the web bomb pairs, right? So we have the baiters and then their pair and where they should be standing. And then the person who bait the Preservoker is moving off and putting their last orb from Venomous Rain kind of against the wall here. And then what you're going to also want to do is assign 2 blue players to look to soak around the back of the room here against the wall, because these are the more difficult ones to be soaked. And people will naturally, other blue players will naturally soak as they run around into like stack of orbs. And so having 2 players specifically assigned to look to soak in the back will increase your consistency by a lot. And you can see one final graphic for these web pair stops in phase 1 is I've assigned which players are going across the charge graphic, right? So we have the 3 melee players getting to relax and maintain their uptime on the caster boss before she ports away, and the 3 tank, right? So his uptime isn't as important. Dev Evoker, who is able to cast while moving, and then an Augmentation Evoker, who is also not as tied to having high uptime as like a melee or caster. So those are the 3 assignment graphics for those players. And hopping back into the video, let's watch it together. Right, so you can see these are all created. And then every player shifts a bit right so that they don't spawn their orbs stacked, right? So if these players had just stayed directly on this orb for Venomous Rain, they would have created 2 exactly stacked orbs, right? 2, 2. And then once you soak 2, it's very easy to think, oh, I'm just going to soak this orb that looks like 1 right over here. And then it's actually 2. And then you hit 4 stacks and then you die. Just to recap, every time you soak an orb, you get a stack of ticking damage. If you hit 4 stacks, you are instantly killed. There is no counterplay. So a weak aura that you have should be counting up from 1 to 2 to 3. It should make a sound at 3 so that you know you cannot soak anymore. But you have to be specifically aware at 2 stacks because any orb that you see could be a double. And realistically, there's no reason to chance it. And then especially in P2, with how the web vortexes work, we'll talk about this a bit later, but specifically you should definitely stop at 2. It's just unnecessary to go higher, right? And then so you can see the ordering is web bomb baits, web bomb links formed, web pairs formed. Those drop 2 orbs each because the 2 players have gotten hit by each web bombs. So 6 orbs in total. And then every player on that side, which is 7, is dropping a red orb from Venomous Rain, and then everyone is rotating around counterclockwise. Then the red team is soaking only 7 blue orbs from melee, and then there are the ranged blue orbs, which are the remaining 3 that red from range is coming into soak. So what you should be aware of as well is that blue team has to soak 13 orbs on this side if no one gets double hit by the web bomb. Right, so 7 red orbs from Venomous Rain, and then 6 from creating the web bomb pairs. And that while blue only has to soak 7 players only have to soak 7, and 3 have to soak 3. Right. So what you should be aware of is that the blue team in phase 1 has a lot more orbs to soak than the red team. And that's something you want to emphasize, especially with like the specific assignments of who on blue is soaking far. For instance, like you can see on the screen that there are several orbs that are far back. I think this pen color. There are several orbs that are like behind the boss against the wall here, right? Which are going to be generally like harder to soak, even this one. While just the naturally rotating blue players will run into this clump of red orbs. So definitely call back to having at least 2 players assigned to soak this clump of orbs in the back near the wall. And what they're doing is they're just, as they're rotating, they're avoiding the orbs that are all clumped here and specifically soaking the orbs that are clumped back here. And we can see us rotate around. The other thing that you would really like on this fight is to have 2 Death Knights, and you can see there are scarabs spawning here, just like Heroic. We would really like to assign 1 Abomination's Limb for each set of scarabs to help get them into melee, and then those Death Knights can also use manual grips to keep them in melee. So for each scarab set you have an A-Bomb's Limb, 2 to 4 grips, and then D&D slow. Ideally you have an Ursul's Vortex, and then any other kind of CC like a Cap Totem or a stun to stop them from meleeing, and then the Ursul's Vortex to keep them under the boss while the charge happens. And then after the boss gets the damage amp, any adds that are still alive will just explode to ambient cleave. But so that's kind of the formula with the scarabs, is you need the A-Bomb's Limb and the grips to get them into the boss model, right, and start controlling them with stuns, Ursul's Vortex, and Ring of Peace. It's very important that you do this because otherwise they will kill people, but with their melees they really hurt. That's probably the best use of a personal cooldown in any fight, if in any part of the counter where scarabs exist. If they're meleeing you, especially during the spells in P2, slamming a personal before they get like if they're beating on you for a little bit is a big value. Generally, also as well, healers watching those people who are getting meleeed by scarabs. Generally this fight just doesn't have a lot of damage, like a high throughput requirement at all. There are some points where you take some damage, but I don't think it feels overwhelming at any singular point. So focusing people who get 3 stacks of the orb debuff, that ticks somewhat hard, and then the melees from the scarabs are definitely the points where you're most likely to die from like just damage intake, and so that's something to prioritize. And then it's definitely really important that you have a way to control the scarabs. I think having 2 DKs is just significantly advantageous if it is available to you. Otherwise you need to utilize stuff like high-powered blast wave if you have an elemental shaman, like the high-powered thunderstorm, and any other knocks you have like explosive trap, any other kind of knocks that can get them into melee so that they can be controlled. Very important that you get the scarabs together and able to be CC'd and cleaved. And Ursul Vortex, Ring of Peace at the end is also really good use when they're in melee, and then like you've kind of had your control out, just knocking, like if it's like, let's say that the scarab is targeting someone in the stack here, right? A simple ring completely protects them, and then the scarab just sits here trying to get to you and dies immediately. And that's definitely how you should think about Ring of Peace. The way you should think about Ursals is once all 3 scarabs are stacked, your goal is to Ursals them such that they get pulled closer to the center of the boss model, or where the boss model is going to be after he charges, right? To maximize cleave, and also maximize the amount of distance you gain away from the player that they're targeting. So that's kind of the scarab spiel, right? And then you have the 3 players that were assigned to stay and the 3 players that were assigned to go across, creating the 3 strands that you need to stop the boss's charge. And now here's where we come to an interesting phenomena. So we're going to play this rain, right? So blue is now on the right side of the boss and red is on the left. And this is the same every pull. And so you do 1 more rotation without web bombs, so this rain is very easy. It's just 1 orb per player, basically. You have this frontal, and then the thing that you have to be aware of here is that the caster boss can teleport either to the left or right of the scarab boss. So like, we'll say this is the left, we're looking at the outside of the room, and then this is the right. And so what you need to know is that it can teleport either left or right of the boss, and the movement here is maintaining the relative positioning. So red here is on the right, blue here is on the left. When you move here, the team that's closer is moving first, right? And they're moving across. And then the red team is going to follow and fill in on the empty position to the right. So let's play here and show you guys that. All right, so you can see blue team moves first, they go far, and then red team just fills in. And so you maintain the relative positioning, if that makes sense, right? And then this is essentially a complete reset to beginning of phase 1, right? Where we are going to, instead of having the web bombs into Venomous Rain, now it's inverted. Now we get Venomous Rain first, and then we get the web bombs, and then we rotate, and then we stop the charge. So let's watch that. Right, you can see the DK using A-Bomb's limb to get the scarabs stacked up, right? An A-Bomb limb and a grip. And you can see that the web bomb pairs are being made. An easy adjustment here to make this a little bit better is for this player to be more in middle, so that these web bombs have more than enough space to not overlap when they create their web bomb pairs. And you can see that this player here is pushing these people in a bit. But in any case, you're making your 3 web bomb pairs and then you're rotating around. So unlike the first set of P1 where the web bombs go out first and then Venomous Rain, then rotate, it's Venomous Rain, web bomb pairs, then rotate. And we can see it one more time. Venomous Rain, frontal bait, web bomb pairs, waiting for them to land, and then rotating. And the blue is soaking all the extra orbs. The assigned players are going across, and we're stopping the last charge. Right, and after you stop this charge, that is the end of phase 1 as far as mechanics go. So we've watched the red melee POV. Let's watch the rest of the blue melee POV. So before we watched up to the first charge, so we'll continue from there. Actually, we'll rewind it a bit and watch the orb soaking. So my job on this fight, the DH and my job was to soak these orbs at the far back, right? And you can see there's one here, one under the boss, always good to be aware of that kind of stuff. And you can see at this point, what blue needs to do is make room for the red players to come over, right? I never want to have a collision, so just blue players can just completely tuck in and make room for them. You can look for grips on straggling scarabs, as you can see right there. And you can see we're hitting the cap and then all the scarab, last second ring to stop the scarab, and we're chilling. And we're just able to completely focus on the damage amp. The red players go back to their relative position. We've already seen where the boss DPs, it's over here, right? So the ranged red players go back over there, getting ready to follow the boss. And then we finish this damage amp and do the spread for rain. And this is the easy one I said. So there are 3 rains in P2 or P1. The second rain is easy because there are no web bombs. You're not stopping a charge right after. It's simple, just rotate around, soak your orbs. Ideally, want to bait this frontal away from ranged. So remember, this is a red frontal, so it's only on blue players, so we can bait this away from middle and make their lives easier. This could have baited on this player going to soak this orb. Something to be aware of is you can wait. You can either go quickly and soak and then go back to bait, or you can wait for the bait, then go soak. And then right after this frontal, we're following the boss, you can see, and then you just settle back into your relative positions. Right, you can see I'm going to be A-bombing slamming here. My grip got interrupted there, so I had to use 2 grips, and then I'm unable to grip that one, so I call for the other DK to grip it, but he's unable, so this Warlock just personals. and then we rotate around, right? So a very important thing to note here, and it's especially easy to get baited as a blue player because the order is inverted, right? It's very easy to see Venomous Rain and be like, okay, I rotate after Venomous Rain because that's what I do on the first set. And just one more time, it's different on the last set of P1. The third Venomous Rain comes out before the Web Bomb, so you have to wait that like 5 more seconds for the Web Bombs to drop, the pairs to be formed, and then for red to start rotating around before blue goes over and soaks the orbs. Alright, so now the Web Bombs are rotating around, Web Bomb pairs, and then blue is able to go and soak the red orbs. Ping's very useful, obviously, if there's any orbs going unsoaked. Right, and then now you can see this Scarab finally getting controlled. And like I said before, this is the end of phase 1. What needs to happen after this damage amp is the boss needs to be dragged into the middle, and the two groups want to maintain their relative positioning. So with this setup, red is going to be on green, and blue is going to be on skull. The two markers for the intermission are green and skull, and you can see the boss has moved to the center. Blue is stacking on skull, and red is stacking on green. Now, let's go back to the ranged version of the intermission, or the first phase, right? So first we'll look at red. So you can see we got our debuff, and then the 3 red ranged players are going into the middle. And the first thing that happens for them is the Web Bomb bait, right? So they're in a little triangle. They bait these. He makes sure he's not going to hit by this overlapping swirly, right? Because then they would make a pair and make 4 orbs. So they bait the place the Web Bomb orb, and then place the Venomous Rain orb, and then they're rotating around, just like in the graphic before, to soak the blue orbs here, and then the blue team is rotating on the inside to soak the red orbs that they just dropped, right? So the simple rule is red on the outside in, blue on the inside out, right? So this is just the ranged version of the same rotation that melee are doing. And then you don't really do anything except hit the boss, get the ad gripped off of you until the next Venomous Rain, right? Do the Venomous Rain spread, and then the roles are inverted here. So instead of blue rotating on the inside and red rotating on the outside, red has now taken the blue role. They're rotating on the inside, and then blue is rotating on the outside, right? And like I said before in the assignment graphic, you can assign which players take which orbs for the set where there are 2 each for Web Bomb. Very simple, very easy. And I think these images are very descriptive of exactly what needs to occur in ranged, right? And then here, you can see that red has reset to the beginning of phase 1, right? And then you can see red following the boss, blue following behind, maintaining the respective positions. And then this looks exactly the same as the first rain, right? The only caveat is that the rain comes out first, and then Web Bombs come out second, right? And you can see very specifically, they're making these pairs of orbs, right? And so each player can take 2 pairs, or 1 pair, sorry. And then, like I said before, red ranged are rotating out, blue ranged are rotating in, right? And you just need to be aware of your teammates, make their lives easy, right? And then at this point, all you're doing is waiting for the damage amp, controlling the scarabs, because the red melee players are taking care of the charge, right? And after this, if you're not one of the 4 players in the intermission playing without your group, then you simply go to skull or triangle, maintain the relative positioning. Right, let's watch the blue ranged version, right? Simple frontal bait as blue to start off. And then we're finding the position for Venomous Rain. First Venomous Rain, placing this orb, and this orb is probably going to be soaked by the red ranged players. And then we're rotating inside, out, and taking our 2 orbs, right? In this scenario, the frontal was baited on one of the ranged blue players, so that's just something that they have to dodge. And then the next mechanic is Venomous Rain, right? So we're stopping the charge, prepping for the damage amp, and then the next mechanic that we have to deal with is Venomous Rain. So we're taking the red ranged position at the start, placing in a little 3 triangle, and then rotating on the outside around, and the red ranged are rotating on the inside to soak our orbs. And then red team is following the boss first in this position, blue team is following the boss second. Red team will be on the far side, blue team will be on the close. And then we're resetting to the positions at the beginning of phase 1 for the first Rain and Web Bomb combo. And you can see that what we did was assign every immunity that prevented an orb from spawning on the ground for the third Venomous Rain in phase 1. You can see we're committing every Ice Block, Bubble, Cloak of Shadows to spawn less orbs. This isn't as impactful now because the orb mechanic has been nerfed and is generally much, much easier. But why not make it easy for you if you can? One thing you have to be aware of is that Cloak of Shadows, or anyone who's immuning and supposed to make a web bomb pair, if you are in your immunity when the web bomb hits and is going to make the pair, it will just remove it, and then you'll wipe to not having made the connection. So that's something to be aware of, is that you need to cloak before the web bomb would hit, or if you're using any other immunity and making a web pair to make less orbs, you need to make sure that that immunity falls off before the web bomb would hit you. Dodging this frontal, and then waiting for the web bombs, and then we're rotating on the inside, red is rotating on the outside, soaking our orbs, and then we're waiting for the charge and the damage amp. Small note, if you are in this line, you will die if you are not on the correct side of the strands, and if you're even too close, you can also die. So stay outside of the line, damage amp, and you can see here that blue will be going to triangle, red will be going to skull. Right now, we need to talk about the intermission. So the intermission is actually very, very easy to understand once it's explained to you, in my opinion. So we have these markers, and these are the liquid markers. To start off the intermission, like I said, you are making two groups, right? So one group here, right? And depending on how if the boss ends up here or here at the end of phase 1, I think it's actually more like here or here. It could be either group starting on skull or green. You're just maintaining the positioning from wherever you end up in phase 1 and going to the closest marker. Let's say it's like this in the screenshot where red is on skull and blue is on green. What we've done is we've assigned 4 players, 2 locks and 2 mages to play together outside of the group. And what this does is it increases their uptime, which isn't very important because we should be holding damage on the shield for cooldowns. And then, well, that's a discussion we can come to later. Let's talk about lusting on this fight. So you have 2 options. You can play the fight like we did originally, where you lust the last double amp of phase 3, and that's a very safe maneuver. And what that should allow you to do is potentially go faster and not hold damage in the first intermission. The reason why we hold damage in the first intermission is to line up cooldowns with the first burn of phase 2. So that's kind of one option you have. The second option is you push the intermission faster and lust at the end for the double burn, and you'll definitely have the damage no matter what, as long as you execute that last double burn correctly. The other option you have is you hold and then try and do the double burn with lust as well, or you hold and then you lust the first burn of phase 2. And then what that could potentially allow you to do, especially with the damage buff coming next week, is skip the last dispel set of phase 3 entirely and just kill the boss. And that would be very advantageous because that's a very hard point of the fight, point where a lot of people get stuck on. So that could be an angle. And then kind of benefits for that is like you can kind of straggle to a kill as well if you get the dispel off, and then you can have like some immunities and people live, and maybe you can straggle out a kill there, especially with the damage buff. But that's like a decision you can make. I think either is perfectly valid. So back to the intermission. So you have red on skull, blue on green. You have 2 players who are the opposite color in ranged on this purple mark and to the left of orange. And then what these players will do, they're just rotating around each other and dodging the pie slices that come out. And so they kind of do their own thing. I'll show you the POV of that in a bit later. The main thing is what the red and blue groups do that are rotating around the boss. So the first thing that happens is blue, or whatever team is on triangle, should drop slightly to the right of triangle, not to the left, right? So either on triangle or slightly to the right, and then red can just drop on skull. The second thing that needs to happen is that the whole group rotates immediately all the way around to the left, right? So each group is going to the left. And then what you're doing is the first pie slice was on the orbs that you dropped on skull and green. So what you're doing is you're rotating all the way around and stopping right before this first pie slice, and you're waiting for this first pie slice to go off, and then you're moving into it and soaking the orbs on that pie slice, and then you're safe on this pie slice because it was the first one to go off. And then what you do is you simply wait until that set of slices has gone off and it's starting the next set. And what you're going to do is you're going to drop left of where you just soaked the orbs, as left as possible, right? So I believe in game, this is more like if you're on skull, you would drop them on blue. And then if you're on green, you would drop them more by X. Basically as left as possible is good. And then immediately as the orbs drop, you reverse and go back right. So you drop the orbs here and here. And then instead of continuing to go left, you reverse and go right, facing the middle. And then what you do is you just stop where you've just soaked the orbs. And then you drop the orbs there again. And then you keep rotating right. And you keep doing this for the rest of the phase. And the reason that you do this is because the order in which the pie slices go down is exactly the same every intermission, right? So the reason this all works is because it's completely deterministic. You start off by dropping the orbs on these markers, which is the first pie slice. You rotate all the way around, stop before the first pie slice, where all the orbs the other team dropped are. You wait for that to go off. You move into that one that is now clear, soak all the orbs, wait for the pattern to finish. Before the new pattern starts, you drop to the left of the area that you're currently in, and then go right. And then you're just soaking the other team's orbs and rotating right for the rest of the phase. So now that I've explained it to you on the raid plan, let's see what that looks like in game. Important notes is that you really want to be stacked, and you really don't want to be putting orbs inside like the boss model. Think of it as like maintaining a slight spread whenever the orbs are going down, right? You can see we're maintaining a nice little spread here. Intermission starts, we've placed all our orbs, and we're going left, right? So we're rotating left. The other team also rotated left, right? So all the way left, facing the middle. And then you can see here that all the orbs almost are in the first pie slice, right? So we're going to wait for this first slice to go off, right? Then we can go in, soak, and just be safe for the remainder of this pattern, right? And what I'm calling here is drop left, drop left, drop left, go right, right? And so you can see all these blue orbs now are in the first pie slice again, right? All these red orbs are in the first pie slice again. So now that we're going right, it's the same dynamic where we can just stop in front of the first slices to go off, wait for them to go off, and then we move into the space that is now completely safe to soak the orbs. All right, so we're pausing. The first have gone off, now we're soaking. Then we're just doing slight spread, new orbs, and then rotating all the way around right. And we just do right for the rest of the phase. So first drop, rotate left, dropping new orbs left to the left, so like just like it needs to be called, right? So you're chilling after you soak the first set of orbs. Drop left, drop left, drop left, go right as soon as you drop the orbs. And you can see we just chill here, safe. And then a little cheat is if you drop to the left before you go right, it makes it a little easier. Watch us rotate around here. These orbs are able to be soaked faster, right? So you can see we can just immediately soak all these orbs as we wait for the first slice to go off. So we wait for the first and then we can soak the rest, right? In the liquid pack, we have a purple line that delineates when we want to, like how long we would like to hold DPS, but it's essentially just we want to finish soaking the fourth set of orbs and then push. And it looks the same. It's relatively the same for the other group. You're going left, dropping left, and then going right, soaking, going right, soaking, pushing. So it's the exact same for both sides. You're just starting in a different place. All right, so you can see here, they're starting on green. We'd ideally drop slightly to the right of green. And you can see this red orb is a little weird. We would have preferred that this be in the first slice. This red orb is fine with the increased duration you have to soak the orbs. Before, it would have probably timed out and wiped you. And you can see you're going left, waiting for this slice to go off, moving into soak, making sure you don't get 4 stacks. And then the last one of the pattern has gone out. Drop left, go right. And then for the rest of the phase, you just rotate right, wait for the first slice to go off, drop the orbs, rotate right. So we're soaking here, waiting for a new pattern, waiting for new orbs, soaking the orbs that are not in the first slice. Now we can go soak the rest of them, holding damage, dropping our last set of orbs, rotating around to the right, etc. For the players in ranged, you're going to either purple or to the left of orange. So you can see you're just maintaining this vertical alignment, dropping your 2 orbs, rotating around each other, soak to soak, and then not getting hit by these lines. Something to mention is that these lines, the width of them is bigger than the web graphic, so he's actually very close to getting hit here. So if you have to choose between showing it respect and not showing it respect. Just make it, imagine it's a little wider than you think it is. Drop new orbs, and then rotate around each other. The same thing from THD's POV, and this is the non-purple set. You can see to the left of orange, and you can see from the Warlock's POV. Rotate around each other, maintain your safety, and just dropping each other's orbs, rotating around. And if you're one of these players, I would very much recommend that you watch THD's POV if you're on the orange side, and then Fired Up's POV if you're on the other side, purple side. Alright, now to get into P2, we have more assignment images. So the first thing that we need to do is look at Web Vortex. So that's the additional mechanic in P2 outside of Dispels is Web Vortex. And so as I mentioned before, one team at random will get pulled first, either red or blue, and then the next team will get pulled second. The rule for this mechanic is the first team that gets pulled goes left and right, and the second team that gets pulled goes through. So what that means is the first team that gets pulled together is going left and right to make room for the second team to get pulled in, and then with that space, the other team can just go straight through and run directly forward. And then both teams will be safe from the circle that she does after she does both pulls. And then the team that gets pulled first is baiting in this organization, try and force web bomb pairs. So there's some nuance with this mechanic that makes it more consistent, and I can show you that in a second. So that image that I just made is the pairs. So what we can do is have two players stack directly on top of each other. And what this does is makes them substantially more likely to be paired together. And then what you can do is go into Bart's reminder tool for Silken Court. And for each web vortex, you can add a reminder that says who you're stacking on and which direction you're going, right? So in this scenario, I'm stacking on a warrior. And so I know who I'm stacking on, and I'm going to the right if I get pulled first. If I get pulled second, I'm going through. Let me draw this for you guys. So the first team that gets pulled is going left and going right. And this is facing the boss, right? So this is according to my facing, this would be left, this would be right. If you're the red team, then it would be inverted, obviously. But that doesn't matter because the people who that matters for are on the same side, right? So the first team, let's say that it's blue here. We're going left and right. My partner and I, so the warrior and I, have already decided that if we get paired together, I'm going right and he's going left. And what that means is that we can break our web pairs more quickly if we do get linked together, and then it also ensures that people are generally split up going each direction. This convention is important as well because even if you do get through, which is red team has come through, they've gone left and right, and then blue team is second, we're going through, we can still do the left and right convention once we go through and break our webs. So a double purpose reminder. And so what you can do is just go through each of these web vortexes. There are 2 in phase 1, and add this reminder who you're stacking on and which direction you're going. And you can figure that out with who you're assigned to stack on. So you can see the other team actually gets pulled first. They go left and right. You can see they're pretty evenly spread up. And then another nuance with this mechanic is that your partner is decided as soon as this web graphic is attached to you. So what you can see me do here is as soon as I get linked to the boss, I book it backwards because my web pair is already made, and I can drop the orb at the you drop the orb at the end of the cast, which pulls you in. So the actual act of pulling you in is what causes the orb to drop at your current position, and there's going to be a circle around the boss after you get pulled in, right? So I can force my orb to be outside of the circle by running back, and it doesn't mess up any web pair bait that I had made. So what I'm calling here is go run back, and then through. Another thing to be cognizant of these orbs are all going to be 2 stacks, right? Because we're stacking on our partner. So no one can soak more than 1 stack of orbs. And that's something to be very, very aware of. It's very easy to mess up. And then we go directly from this web vortex into the dispels. So let's talk about that a bit. Whether you're using the liquid or Nordic auras, the dispels note is pretty the same. You need to define an order for the healers that are doing the dispels. So ours, it was the priest, the resto shaman, the paladin, and then the evoker, and then the 5th dispel is actually the priest again. And that's and then they can also do like a mass dispel. Something else to think about is using stuff like Dwarves, Diffuse Magic, Cloak, Warlock Pet Dispel, Ice Block, other immunities that remove it, and stuff like that to save pulls where a Dispel is like not going to go off, the boss isn't going to stun, isn't going to get stunned, like the Dispel is slow. Having the agency to do it yourself, you can definitely save pulls, save kills. That's what actually created this kill for us, was a very heads-up play with both Imp Dispel and Diffuse Magic from the tank. And it's just a hard mechanic, and it's very important that your raid leader, if they're in the raid, they take that extra bandwidth to focus entirely on Dispels. I think for like the first, almost all of our prog, I was super coggy, just standing here like AFK jumping basically, focusing on calling Dispels, right? And it's just because it's that important. If you have an outside raid leader, obviously it's a lot easier, but it's just really important. And then you have to think about how you're calling it as well. There's a lot of stuff to think about. So in P2, you have time to do 2 Dispels before she teleports. For the first set here, she's in the relative middle of the room, and then she'll port to the exact middle. You can do these Dispels kind of like straight through. Very helpful thing is friendly nameplates, so you can see when they're under the boss. A helpful thing that I don't actually have is the debuff icon attached to friendly nameplates, so you can see more clearly when they're under the boss. And tailoring your calls to help both the people moving in and the healers as much as possible is just really, really nice. So if the Dispel is slow, just calling the healer to remind them, right? So if you say Leech 3, 2, 1, and then 2 seconds go by and they haven't been Dispel, say RP guy Dispel, right? And then just maintaining your calm. If it bounces, you just call faster. Instead of saying 3, 2, 1, say, let's say it bounced, say Pat 2, 1, reload 2, 1, Pinga 2, 1, etc. You can change things to make it more consistent, and so that it's very important that you maintain control even as the situation becomes dynamic. So if the first Dispel is slow and you need to be able to realize that you're not going to be able to get the second Dispel before she teleports to the middle of the room, and tell that player to go to the middle of the room early so that they're in position to be Dispelled immediately. Another nice thing you can do, if you have the bandwidth to do so, is look and see when they're ready to be Dispelled and tell the healer to Dispel them at that time. Instead of doing a static name 2, 1 or name 3, 2, 1, you look at your screen and say name 2, 1 Dispel, or if they're already there, you can say name Dispel, right? You as the raid leader here have pretty much ultimate control over what these people, like the input that they receive from you, right? So you need to kind of coach them to be ready. Like they'll get a prompt on their screen if they have the Dispel. They can see this list, whether it's the Liquid or Nora Sky version. This is the Nora Sky version. If you're on the list, you need to be prepared to move into the center of the boss's model. That's another good note, is that it does need to be the exact center of the boss's model. Anything that's not the exact center is risky. If you're in the exact center, someone else needs to be trolling for it to bounce to anyone else but the boss, right? And you can see how, like, exactly how far in this player got, which is very, very good. Something else to note is when you are going in for the Dispel, you're always going back to your group, right? So blue is relatively stacked over here, right? So you're going in from your group and then back to your group. And what this allows is so people to like blindly go in and out. Yeah, you could add a sound to the debuff getting removed from you as well, which I think is really, really good. And then just really calm, clear raid leading can really help you maintain consistency here. If you don't think you have someone who can do that, then you can use the macro that both of these weakors provide, I believe, to alert the appropriate healer that you are in place to Dispel. And that removes the requirement for these calls, but it does place a lot more pressure on the people getting Dispelled to know when they need to go, etc. Right? So that's generally going to be definitely harder than having the raid leader supply most of this bandwidth for the people who are getting Dispelled. So that's kind of a short discussion on the Dispel mechanic. In phase 2, there's always time to do 2 dispels before the boss teleports to the middle. So you can, as soon as the dispel goes out, especially if you're calling, what I have here is like a reminder that dispels are coming out so that I'm ready as soon as the dispels go out, like the debuffs go out, to start calling them, right? And I'm trying to call first name 3, 2, 1, second name 3, 2, 1, third player in the middle of the room 3, 2, 1, and then I finish, right? So with the 5th dispel, I don't think it's worth it ever cutting it close, because if it does mess up, like if it does bounce, if you have 2 seconds for the other player to get under the boss and get dispelled, you can still save it. So I think in the 3 to 2, I would say like even 3 to 4 second range, just as a safety measure, dispelling with 3 to 4 seconds left on the cast for the last player, if they're in position, is great. I don't think there's any reason to just hold it for 2 more seconds of damage debuff with how the boss is at the moment. I think it's just unnecessarily risky, so I very much caution against doing that. The other thing is that some of the sets in Phase 3, you're going to want to call much faster. So specifically the last dispel set in Phase 3, you're going to want to, if you're the raid leader, probably add a reminder to the last set of dispels that you need to call the first player very quickly. So that one definitely needs to be a name 2, 1, and then it's basically mandatory that you get 1 player dispelled before she TPs to the middle. What she does here, she does a double TP. We'll circle back to this later once we get into Phase 3. Let's focus on the rest of the main Phase 2 assignments. So this image is basically important for both Phase 2 and Phase 3. These are the relative positions that you should have everyone be stacking together for every web vortex, especially in P2, not as relevant in Phase 3. Phase 3 is more random. As long as people are in the correct position, that's completely fine, and you just have to figure out the breaks. Same with the second pull of Phase 2. If you can find these people to partner, great. It's more important for the second web vortex of P2 and then the first and third of P3 that you are in the correct position. Much more important. So with that being said, let's hop into the P2 VOD. And so to begin Phase 2, we're coming out of the intermission. Important thing to note here is that depending on how you started the intermission, right, with whatever team, essentially either team can end up on green or skull here. And what you have to know is that the blue team is baiting the frontal here and not the red team. So the red team can find their web vortex spots immediately, and the blue team needs to bait on the marker to the right of where we're playing web vortex. Liquid is playing web vortex on X and blue, and then we're baiting on skull and green. And this dynamic is going to be repeated for the second part of P2. So P2 kind of comes in 2 distinct phases. The first thing that you do is you have skull and green, and for this set, only blue is baiting on skull because there's only the red boss frontal. In the next part of P2, both teams are going to be baiting the respective frontals on skull and green, and then they're both going to be rotating to do web vortex on blue and X. So we can see here, we're baiting the frontal, we move to the left, and then we're finding our web vortex pairs. Right, so you can see here everyone finds their partner, and we're ready for whichever side gets pulled first. First team to get pulled is going left and right, second team is going through. Red gets pulled first, they're going left and right, we're going through. You can see the Northern Sky weak aura tells you which side you are, what convention you are following, and then at this point dispels have come out. So the raid leader should be thinking right at this moment and calling the first guy. Blue should be aware that the frontal is going to come out in about 6 seconds during this. So both weak auras prioritize blue players first. What this does in this moment is it makes it quite likely that no blue player is going to be under the boss, baiting the frontal under the boss. But that's something that the blue players that aren't getting dispelled want to be aware of as well. And you can see 2 players were dispelled before she TP'd, and then the 3rd player, and then the 4th player, and then the 5th player. And you can see that scarabs come out here. They also come out during the next dispel, which is the second dispel of P2 and the last one. And so we want 1 Death Knight to A-Bomb's Limb and control these ads, and then for the next set, the other Death Knight is going to A-Bomb Limb and control the ads. Ursol's, Ring, General CC, all good to be used here for the ads. We get the Singing Delirium off on the caster boss, and then this is where both teams need to be finding skull and green, right? So we're both naturally on a side of the boss. and it's pretty obvious which team should be going to which. Red should be going to Skull, and blue should be going to green. This is something the raid leader can call during this damage amp, and you need to be in position by the time the blue and red frontals are going to be baited, right? And I'll show you a bunch of graphics about how this works. But so each team is baiting their frontal and dodging to the left so that they end up on blue and red, and then you're looking for where the boss TPs. So I'm going to show you some images here. So these are all the different combinations that are possible for this TP. You can see there are 8, and I'm going to explain the nuance here. So because either team can be on either marker to start the intermission, and they can end on either marker, you're starting P2 with either team on blue and red for the first web vortex, and also the second web vortex, right? As a part of the strategy, you're starting on skull and green, and then so either team can be on skull and green, and then you're rotating left to red and blue, and either team can then be on the red and blue markers. And so what that means is that we are duplicating kind of each set for how this looks. So what happens is the boss TPs to like one of 4 quadrants. It can teleport like generally behind the X marker, behind the X marker here, behind the blue marker here, or to the side in between both groups. So if we're going to label these, we can say A, B, C, D, right? And the dynamic here is that A and B are very easy because each team can just maintain their relative positioning and move to the boss, right? And it's very, very, very easy to see exactly what should happen in the A or B scenarios. Now, what's difficult is the C and D scenarios. Once you realize that either blue or red can be on either marker here, and you need a consistent convention for which team is going where. And the consistent convention is displayed by these graphics. So let's take a closer look here. So you can see by the red and blue circles is that's where each team is. And we can see by the brown frontal, which is always second. So this is the one that's still going out when she teleports, and you can see the blue letter indicates where she TPs. So we're looking at it in perspective. So either the blue team was on this marker, they baited the frontal here, they moved to the left, and then we're looking for the boss TP, right? Similar here is the blue baited here, moved to the left, and then in this case, the boss teleported behind the blue team, and in this one, the boss teleported behind the red team. For this one, the boss teleported behind the red team, but the frontal was over here. And then for this one, it's kind of the inverse, right, of the following one, because the teams are switched. So the frontal is baited still on the blue team. So if we look at this, we can go through it, right? So in this scenario, this is the basic rule that we're following. The team that is closer to the boss is going on the same side as the frontal. The team that is farther from the boss is going away from the frontal, right? So if we look at this image, the team that's closer to the boss is going on the same side as the frontal. The team that is farthest from the boss is going away from the frontal. The team that is closest to the boss is going on the same side as the frontal. The team that is farthest from the boss is going away from the frontal. And the last one here, close to the frontal, close to the boss, same side as the frontal, farthest from the boss, away from the frontal, right? And then if we go through each of these, we can make a very easy determination, right? Blue always goes left, and red always goes right. So if we look at these two, blue left, red right, blue left, red right, blue, this is upside down, right? So blue left, red right, blue left, red right. So instead of anyone having to look at the frontal and determine anything, realize which group you're in and determine anything, all you have to do here is think blue left, red right. So let's talk it through, right? So we've just baited the frontal. Something else that's really helpful is she's casting her teleport here, which is called Void Step. You can see her big head, not from my POV very well, but she faces the way she's going to go. So you can see, bang. Yeah, so you can see her facing here. It's actually exactly where she's going to go. Sorry, I went a little too far back, right? You can see she's facing this way, right? More clearly if you look at kind of her butt, right? And you see, so you can already think about where you need to go if you have the bandwidth to look at her facing. And obviously that becomes more relevant on the behind sets, right? So let's just imagine to cement it, right? Let's imagine she teleports here using the frontal logic. This is the close team. We're on the same side of the frontal, right? So red goes right. And then blue is far, and we need to go on the far side of the frontal, so blue goes left, right? And then same, we decided that follows our convention. Blue is always left, red is always right. Let's imagine that it was the boss TP'd here. This frontal is over here. Close goes on the same side of the frontal, so blue again goes left, and then red goes right. And it's not any more difficult than that, and you can take that to the bank. So following this, each team just kind of moves, gets ready to be pulled by Web Vortex. The farther away you are from the boss, the easier your orbs are to soak, because they're not in the circle. And then you break these strands, and then you get ready for dispels. We're trying to call fast here, so I would say El Nino, 2, 1, prepared, 2, 1. It bounced Pinga in the middle, 2, 1, Wasm, 2, 1. And then I'm calling Rav here, and then this dispels late. This is a good time, say, RP guy, dispel, right? And then this is a good example of how good backups are. So Rav dispels himself with Imp, moves away instantly, and then Boomy comes in and dispels himself instantly with Diffuse Magic, and that saves this pull, right? So just an example of how you can save this mechanic with heads up play from people that can remove it themselves. Also very, very good for healers whose dispels come back up to be aware and cover for other healers if they're dead or slow. If you see that they're under the boss ready to be spelled and the timer is ticking down, you're not gonna, like, it's going to be tight if you wait any longer. Rip it and just calm. It's better to try and save it than just watch it fail, right? And so after you do this second Web Vortex and Dispel set of P2, then you enter the second intermission, which is generally much, much easier than the first intermission, much less complicated. All you're doing is maintaining relative distance from the group on the other side and trying not to place any orbs inside this circle, right? That just makes them very hard to see with all like the brown animation around. So you're really trying to place orbs outside the red circle of the boss's model, and then you're just always rotating right and you're dodging these swirlies. You can see that they always propagate outwards, so you can predict where they're going to move. And you soak, try and drop opposite try and maintain distance between the two groups, drop the orbs, and you keep rotating to the right. When you, sometimes if your damage is not great, you can get this last set, so you need to make sure that you finish this if they do spawn. It's not too bad. You can see how easy it is to make work here. And then, so the beginning of phase 3, what needs to occur is the red team needs to go to the wall and beta frontal off to the side. So the red team should be following the caster. And let's actually look at a different POV that is a bit cleaner. So if we look at Fired Up's POV here, or the beginning of phase 3. So you can see this is the beginning of phase 3. We don't get the extra spike storm, so the room looks very chill. And you're just kind of hitting the boss here. Now, Skyne Spinner Takaj can spawn anywhere around the room. And you can see that we're pinging where she spawned here. And the reason for that is because the red team has priority. Blue team should be just chilling, hitting the scarab, and red team should be moving to Takaj, right, who's here, and then baiting the blue frontal off to the side, and then moving directly to the wall for the first web vortex of phase 3. And so we can see the red team moving there, and then blue team follows to hit the scarab. Red team is baiting off to the side, ideally, and then everyone gets in position for web vortex. Now, it's very important that you try and spread so that you don't stack these orbs. Find your partner, and then something nice that the blue team tank can do on the scarab is actually move him a bit back here. That's actually very nice because it puts most of the orbs outside of the circle that the caster does and makes it much easier to soak. Another good thing to do is as soon as the connection is made here visually with the strand is that you move back a bit, place the orb even farther back, and you can see first team goes left and right, second team goes through. In phase 3, red always goes right or through. If they're first, all of them go right to maintain the strands on the first and third vortex of phase 3 because it's paired with a charge, right? So we're trying to maintain all the web partners to stop the charge. And you can see that after you go left and right, you need to circle back after the circle to finish soaking the orbs and then stop the charge. And I can show you from my POV. So the whole red team is baiting off to the side here for the blue frontal. goes off, they all move directly behind the boss. And then we're finding our web pairs. You can see my reminder pop up with who I'm stacking on, which direction I'm going. And then you can see the connections made. We all run back. And then this is where I make a fatal error, right? And this is what I've been saying about the 2 stacks. Every vortex where you're stacking with a partner, you need to think of every orb as 2 orbs, right? So I very brainlessly and thoughtlessly soak 4 orbs and die, right? And so that's something that's very easy to do in this phase, and something you need to be very, very aware of, right? And from the red POV here, the text here says right and keep, right? We can watch them bait their frontal here, right? Just off to the side, rotate into our web partner positions, right? Find our partner, and then a weak orc pops up, says right and keep. Our web pair is made. We could move back if we wanted to, and all web players are going right and keeping to stop the charge. Rotating all the way around, staying out of the circle, and then see how many of these blue orbs are either outside the circle or very close once it goes off, right? And we can just soak in, finish soaking, and then we're ready to stop the charge. You can see that similar to phase 1, the blue boss, the caster boss, has TP'd away. What this means is that all red players are now kind of on the boss's butt during the damage jump. Depending on whether the boss TP'd right or left, we're going to have a warlock gateway for those players to gateway to the far side of the caster boss, wherever she TP'd to. And we'll see that in a second here. Red hits the boss a bit, and then actually during this amp, after this frontal gets targeted, takes the gate. And so now all these red players are in position for the web vortex that is coming in 2 seconds, and then blue follows, gets to hit this boss a bit longer in the damage amp, and then follows afterwards. And then both players get targeted with web vortex. Either team can get pulled first. The first team is going left and right. The second team is going through. This web vortex is exactly like the ones in phase 2, where either team is on these sides of the boss, instead of like the first and third ones of P3, where red is always against the wall and blue is always against to the middle. So we can see them going left and right, second team going through, not getting hit by the spike storm, and then finishing soaking orbs. And then after these orbs are finished, we get a dispel set. We can see this weak orc tells you what number dispel you are, right? And then we're calling 1 dispel here. I load to 1. We decided to do only 1 on the outside and then 4 in the middle. So he knows he's second. He's pre-positioned. Gets dispelled instantly once the boss TPs. And remember, very important, he went back to his group after getting dispelled. Second. And then this one is milked a bit too much for my liking, but it's all good. This overlap does a bit of damage because you're doing the dispels into the swarm from a new rush. This is the ability that he replaces summoning scary with, and it's just light raid damage. And after you've done this first dispel set of P3, you reset to the beginning of phase 3, where you're looking for where Takaj TPs. You're letting red move to her first, bait the frontal against the wall, and then find the web vortex positions. Blue is following the scarab, and there's a specific dynamic that you want to have here, where the tank that has the scarab actually moves him a bit towards the center. What's very, very important here is that you have a distinct separation, and then everyone who's dropping a blue orb here, once their strand is created, just completely books it towards the middle, gains as much distance as possible, and places these blue orbs as far away from the blue circle from Takaj as possible to make it easier to soak. And the other thing that this does is it creates a nice dynamic with the spike storm circle, creating the desync from the blue boss's circle that's exploding around here, and the spike storm that grows, right? So you can see the boss cast the spikes there, and you can see just how easy it is to soak these blue orbs when they're like this. So the red team got first here, so this means that they're going through and keeping. If they had gotten second, they would go right and keep. So if blue got first, they're getting pulled in first. Blue team would be going left and right. And that is the case, sorry, I misspoke. So blue team got pulled first, they're going left and right. Red team get pulled second, they're going through, right? Create a nice dynamic. If red team had gotten first, they're going all right and keeping, and then blue is going through. Right? And you can see how nice that looked. And you can see how all the blue orbs are just nicely out of the circle. They're not in the spike storm, they're not in the blue circle, and they're just so easy to soak. And something that is specific about this last set is you really want to stop a Nerub-ar in the center of the room. So if you've watched the other sets in phase 1, is that the last kind of strand that hits a Nerub-ar, he actually like slides a bit and would actually stop a bit past that, right? So we have all the strands way back here to ensure that a Nerub-ar stops in the middle of the room for cleave, and so that positioning is not strange. All right, so we stop a Nerub-ar here, and then Tekaj teleports. Let's see if I can get a nice VOD of this from the blue side. So this is the blue POV. The red team is gating here, and the blue team is following after. You can see them follow here, and then get ready for the web vortex. They got pulled first. They're going left and right. Second team getting pulled, they're going through, breaking the strands, rotating around to soak the opposite orbs, and then going into dispels, right? Getting in position for dispels, and that's a dangerous thing to do. Very good thing to notice is that you need to wait directly under the boss until you get until this gets removed. I strongly suggest adding a sound for when your debuff is removed. Makes it free. You just hear the sound, then you move away, right? You can see if he hadn't moved back in there, it would have bounced to a teammate instead of the boss. And you can see we did the same thing here where we do 1 dispel before she TPs, and do 4 in the middle. So the second person to get dispelled can just be told you're doing your dispel in the middle, and they can be there before the boss TPs to speed up dispels. And then after this dispel is finished, we are resetting back to the beginning of phase 3 where we're watching for where she TPs and allowing red to move first. As soon as red baits this blue frontal, they can find their web partner positions against the wall. And this is where I suggest a change in strategy from what Liquid did on their first kill, where the blue, whoever had the blue tank that has a Nerub-ar pulls him significantly towards the middle of the room, and then everyone who is dropping a blue orb attempts to place their orb as far back as possible. And what that does is it just makes the blue orbs almost extremely trivial to soak. And you can see the first team that gets pulled here is blue, so they're going left and right. If red was the first team to get pulled, they would go right and keep, and blue would go through. Now red is going through and keeping, and then blue is wrapping around to finish soaking the red orbs after the explosion goes off. And then we're trying to do 1 dispel here at minimum before she TPs. So what she does here, which is very interesting, is she TPs to the outside of the room and then TPs to the center. So you lose a bit more time on this last dispel set than any other set to her TPing to a place where no one could possibly dispel her. So we managed to get 2 off here, which makes this very, very free, but you can see her do it here. So what makes doing 2 here potentially a bit awkward is these spike storms. This spike storm could have prevented someone from getting onto the boss here, but very much recommend if you are able to do 2 dispels here to do so. If it's tight, just hold the 4. So do 1 dispel before the boss TPs 100% no matter what, and then do 2 if possible, and you just have to be aware if it's possible or not. Recommend calling like a faster dispel here, like I had in that reminder. Be ready for the names to come out. Say Lip 2-1, Granako 2-1, and you can easily get 2 off very quickly. And so you're going to lose some time. You can see here she ports away. No way anyone could dispel her here. And then she's going to teleport again into the middle. And so you need to tell this player to be in position, and no player should be in the middle here to allow that player to get onto the boss safely. And then all you're doing is just stopping her cast here. And if you stop her cast here, you win. You're lusting as soon as the boss charge. The boss gets stunned from the charge. You're lusting here, and then you're focusing on doing these dispels. And this is something that I think players can get baited by a lot, is the only thing that matters here is that you stun Tekaj, right? Like you handle the dispel mechanic correctly. And if you do that with 20 players alive, you will kill the boss no matter what. There is no failing, basically. If you've had 20 players alive the whole fight, you will win if you do this dispel set correctly, right? And so it's really important, A, that you tell your players to just relax, play safe. Your uptime does not matter. Your damage does not matter on a Nerub-ar here. Just give everyone a little extra room. Don't crowd the middle. Take your time. Be aware of dispels. The only thing you're looking at is your character, where everyone else is in relation to it, and you're being ready to get under the boss and get dispelled. If you have a dispel like a Warlock pet, then you're ready to back up if necessary. If it bounces and you're calling, you're ready to call faster, right? If you aren't able to get a dispel off before she TPs to the middle, then you need to call quite quickly. You need to say name, to 1, and then it needs to happen. Name to 1, happen. Something else you can do in this scenario is if you're just solely looking at people going under the boss, you can say name dispel, name dispel, name dispel. And if people are on point and listening to you, you can definitely do 5 in the middle. It's just very, very tight. If you can get 2 off before, take it slow and just make sure that it gets done correctly. And the biggest thing here is people see the kill. They see that they're so close to the kill. They can feel that they're so close to the kill. They're in lust. The boss has the damage amp, and they focus on the wrong things, right? They focus on doing damage. They focus on, oh, we can kill this pull. This is it, right? Instead of what they should be focusing on, which is just doing this last mechanic correctly. If you just get the dispels off correctly and stun the boss, you will win no matter what, 100% of the time, unless you have 2-3 players dead for like quite a while. And so that's just something that you really, really need to communicate to your players. And then kind of circling back to how to progress this fight in general, depending on how you where you are of like discussion on like Twitter, and I mean even just among like WoW personalities and stuff like that, this encounter is not like most WoW encounters, right? It is very much like a Final Fantasy XIV encounter, where it's all about pass-fail mechanics and doing a very specific dance with your movement and with your positioning, completing like satisfying mechanics correctly. In this video, I've talked a lot about small things you can do to increase consistency, learn faster, make how you're dealing with mechanics more reliable. And when it comes down to it, the thing that's going to make you kill this boss quickly, right, progress through phases quickly, is ensuring that everyone is on the same page, right? If there's one player in your raid that just does not know where they should be, does not know what they should be doing at any point of the fight, they will grief you. So being able to wipe to something because someone is at a different level of understanding than the rest of the raid, and bring up either like a VOD of your recent wipe and go over exactly what happened, exactly why it was wrong, and exactly what you need to do to change it. If you're doing this consistently, you will just vastly decrease the amount of pulls you have on this boss, because every time you wipe, you open up a learning opportunity to prevent everyone else from making the same mistake. Because this is just a knowledge boss. If everyone does the appropriate amount of research and understands everything that I've laid out in this video, then you'll progress through the fight very quickly, because it's not a skill check. Nothing about this boss requires you to be particularly skillful outside of potentially the dispel mechanic, and really that's just maintaining an awareness to the calls and being ready to satisfy the mechanic, right? Outside of that, it's just your understanding of the strategy. And if your whole raid understands the strategy, then what I want to tell people here is like 90% of this boss is just understanding the strategy and some the nuances of the logic behind the strategy, and 10% of it is learning from inside the encounter, right? Like you kind of have to do it to see it, right? Like you have to do it to learn it. You can't expect people to just go in there and one-shot it, even if they understand the reasoning why they should be doing things and what they should be doing at certain times, right? Still need that time in the encounter to reach that progress. So when it comes to approaching the encounter in general, don't think about your damage at all. That will come later. Think about the movement and what you need to do to satisfy the mechanic that's coming up. And that's the best advice I have for this. Hopping into kind of the cooldown assignments, there's a lot of movement related things you can do. Something that's especially relevant if you're holding in the intermission is to make sure you have enough healing for like the back half of the intermission, because the damage does ramp up the longer you're in it. So the first intermission, the Shatter Existence, each hit does hit harder. So that's something you want to be of when you're thinking about healing cooldowns. And then just generally, I'll just scroll through our assignment sheet here if you want to draw inspiration. And then generally using a website like Lorgs to see other kills of Sword and Silken Court and what has worked for other people's other healing comps that are similar to the ones that you're going to run. And the best thing to do here is to try and find a VOD and then also compare it to their logs, and then look in the VOD to make sure that where the button is being pressed makes sense. So if it's a wind rush, if it's a roar, making sure that the press was actually helpful. When it comes to healing cooldowns, maintaining a similar understanding is good. And then this is the other half of, if you're going in with a strategic plan, you're showing them this video, you have everyone on the same page when it comes to the strategy, right, and the movement, positioning, etc. Making sure you have a robust approach to cooldown assignments is also important. when it comes to healing and utility, because you want obviously people to be as safe as possible when they are progressing the encounter, so that they can focus just on doing the mechanics. And then consistently as a railer, you want to reinforce, like, don't think about doing damage here, just think about doing the mechanics. Like, as you're progressing the fight, the damage, you have time to find the damage once you've learned the encounter, right? The damage does not matter until you're ready to kill the boss, and when you're ready to kill the boss, the damage requirement itself isn't very tight, especially with the ramping damage buff that we're getting every week. So it's just, you cannot put enough emphasis on learning the mechanics. You cannot do too much when it comes to trying to get people on the same page, when it comes to taking that time to not pull the boss and show them, like through a stream, like in Discord, say, yo, look at this. This is exactly where we wiped. This is exactly what needs to happen instead, right? Or like, this is exactly where we went wrong. Mindlessly pulling the boss and expecting people to figure out just isn't going to work. That's the best advice I have for you when it comes to this encounter. I believe that is pretty much everything. So yeah, I hope this guide was useful. I hope it helps you with your Silken Court progression. Good luck. Feel free to leave any feedback or commentary in the comment section. I know this guide was a bit long, but I hope it is very, very helpful to you and makes your experience less painful than some of the other guilds that currently have a lot of high pull counts, or that have pulled this boss a lot with difficult progression. So with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.